Hey everyone, welcome back to Liberating Truth. Now, today we're going to dive into a disturbing world of cult leaders and the manipulative tactics they use or they employ, right? Now, just to let you know how this video came about, I was not intending to do this long video or this video. I was just going to mention it as a news item in one of my videos that I had a different topic, you know, more focusing on a spiritual topic. But while reading about Kevin Smith and the autopsy that came out in the newspaper recently, I started thinking about Jim Jones, Jonestown, and then just thinking about both both men. I found that there are similarities between the two. That is, um, very intriguing, or you know, it's something to think about. So we'll be focusing on Kevin Smith, and we'll be examining the dark parallels between these two cases and see what insights and how cults operate, and also the devastating impact the cults can have, right? So in reading about Kevin Smith and Jim Jones lately, I was surprised to see how similar these two were. And you also will be surprised at the similarities between these two men in their madness. Now, as a Christian, I believe principalities and powers are basically the same. So I'm not that surprised that they are similar, right? Because, put it this way, the same spirit or kind spirit that work in Kevin Smith Jim Jones, after Jim Jones died, it's not like the evil spirit died also. Yeah, so you can summarize that same spirit or kind is still around, right? So as believers in the Word of God, we should not be taken by surprise. The Bible talk about we are not ignorant of the enemy's schemes. So let us review. Let us look at Jim Jones. You may have known or watched documentary about Jim Jones, and there are more documentary with a lot more information online. But I'm going to share, and I have time stamp in the video here. So if you don't want to hear the introduction about Jim Jones, you can move along in the video. Watch all the video parts of the video, but you can move along and watch the parts that you are interested in, right? So this is the overview of Jim Jones, right? He was a chilling, charismatic leader, right? And he morphed into something truly dangerous. And in the 1950s, Jones established the People's Temple in Indiana. Initially, the church generated praise for its progressive ideals of racial equality and social activism, right? The enemy is not afraid to use seemingly noble dreams to achieve his evil deeds, right? So that is how it started out. Jim Jones was a social activist, but he was also a skilled manipulator, using his charisma to attract a devoted following. Listen, you should know, or you should be aware, not because somebody is charismatic that means that you should follow them, right? Charismatic, and I use charismatic in the sense they're gifted in their utterance or gifted in their speech, but what is the content of what they're saying? What is their character, right? In the church, we do have people who are given position because of their charisma and not their character. And that is not the criteria for ministers. It's not charisma, it's character, right? And there's a lot of blessing, of course, when you have charisma, right? But the two goes together, right? The what the Bible calls for in leadership in Timothy or Titus is based on character, not charisma, right? So Jones, he was a skilled manipulator, and he uses charisma, right, to attract following. Like many people use their charisma to attract following, to attract following, people to give them allegiance, to people to give them money, right? Now, because he had charisma and not character, beneath the surface, his personality was riddled with instability and a growing hunger for power. So over time, Jones' character or his control over his followers intensified. You know, when you have an insecure person in the pulpit, it's a very dangerous thing. He demanded absolute loyalty and obedience, isolating them from outside influences. And this isolation fostered an environment of fear and dependence, making them more susceptible to his manipulation. So in 1974, Jones, fearing persecution, he relocated his followers to a remote settlement in Guyana called Jonestown. In Jonestown, he established himself as a godlike figure, demanding complete subservience. The tragic culmination of his descent into madness, right? This happened in 1978. Fearing a government raid, Jones orchestrated a mass murder-suicide, resulting in the death of over 900 people, including hundreds of children. Now, you know, there were signs, of course. There's always signs when people do these things, when you hear about, there are always signs, and often it is overlooked. Jones, and this is from the Gospel Coalition, you know, he considered the church to be primarily a means to fulfill his political agenda. And this is according to his wife. His wife said he had not been lured to the ministry by deep religious faith. It is not because he heard a sermon and he heard a word from the Lord, or he felt and he came to the truth that he was a sinner and he needed grace. Nothing like that. It was not because of a deep religious faith, but because it served his goal of achieving social change through Marxism. So he was a Marxist. He had an ideology or philosophy, right? He was a communist. He used religion to try to get some people out of the opiate of religion. She said, adding that he had once slammed a Bible on a table and said, "I've got to destroy this paper idol." And in a record interview, Jones said, "I decided, how can I demonstrate my Marxism? The thought was infiltrate the church. It was in talking about communism." Now listen now. It was in talking about communism with a Methodist superintendent that Jones got his first church. He said, "I want you to take a church." That's his superintendent. Of course, he has many church under his leadership. Jones is quoting the superintendent. I said, you giving me a church? I don't believe in anything. I'm a revolutionary. And he appointed me, right? A communist to a church. And I didn't even meet him through the party. I met him in a used car lot. This was in 1953. Now, so when you're talking about similarities between Jim Jones and Kevin Smith, here's one. We have a couple. Jones, a bisexual, reported had numerous affairs with both men and women in his congregation. His former bodyguard claimed that Jones appointed one of his secretaries to arrange for women church members to sleep with him. He was also arrested in a Hollywood theater on lewd conduct charge after an undercover Los Angeles policeman said Jones had tried to molest him. Right? And so was Kevin Smith. He was convicted, Kevin Smith was, of one count of sexual assault of a 21-year-old man in Canada on November 5th, 2007. A highly placed law enforcement source told the Jamaica Observer. Now let's look at Kevin Smith.
Protection of the church. Instead, the people of the church listen to their father's apostolic voice. They do what they think is right in their own eyes. And when they are destroyed, they have no one to blame except themselves. I want to tell you a story. And I'm going to ask you parents to make sure your children aren't running up and down, but they're seated. I believe tonight is one of the most serious nights in the ministry of this church, because if God was not with me, today would have not been the day it is. I would have not been stopped by police, but police would rather have been in my place. But because God is still God, and He will defend His people, whatever they have planned in their dark covens, and in their hills, and in their dirty vessels, God sent His angel to destroy every plan of darkness that is in them.
Fast forward to Jamaica in the early 2020s. Kevin Smith, the leader of Pathway International Kingston Restoration Ministries, he appeared on the scene, right? Eerie similarities to Jim Jones began to emerge. Smith, like Jones, wielded immense control over his followers. He demanded money and obedience, using titles like His Excellency to cultivate an air of unquestionable authority. Witness alleged he even dictated personal matters, requiring permission for things as simple as vacations. And those who dared to dissent faced threats and intimidation, a chilling tactic used to maintain control. You know, when you look at Kevin Smith Church at the time, there are many people in high society, who used to attend this church. How can you tell me that you're going to have to ask the pastor to go on vacation, and then you have to wait on his permission? But that's the level of the work of manipulation that Kevin Smith did. And when people don't know the Lord personally, then these things can happen. Now Jim Jones, Kevin Smith wanted his followers to call him His Excellency and other names. Jim Jones demanded that his followers call him Daddy. Jim Jones and Kevin Smith, they both had a God complex. And they both were somewhat educated. Jones had a degree in secondary education in 1961. He got a degree in secondary education from a university. I didn't write down the university, so I forgot the university name. And Kevin Smith claims to hold several degrees with a doctorate, of course. He called himself, and he studied psychology and stuff like that. And he's a past student, he was a past student of Jamaica College. Right? One of Kevin Smith's aunts said, Smith migrated to Toronto, Canada as a teenager where he attended theological school. You know, she talked about him that he always come to visit them, and she saw him 3 years ago. That is, she's talking at the time of his death. Him always drive him nice car, come look for us and take things for us. He told us that he was going to invite all of his 6 aunties, including me, to the church, but him never come around to doing it, he said. A very educated man. As the people who the Jamaica Gleaner interviewed said, them family not involved in any foolishness. That is the biggest scandal them would ever call upon, said one resident. Me just feel like him head chip. Me really not surprised if that happened, and everyone in the community know what me mean. Him head chip. So one of the cult playbook is isolation and manipulation. So the method employed by both Jones and Smith reek of the classic cult playbook. Isolation is a key tool. By restricting access to outside information and fostering an us versus them mentality. Now listen for that. They fostered a us versus them mentality. They create a world where the leader becomes the sole source of truth and reality. Critical thinking is discouraged, replaced by blind faith and obedience. I remember around that time when one of my family members sent me a clip on WhatsApp about Kevin Smith talking about COVID, and I mean, he was eloquent in his speaking, right? His words flow flawlessly. You know, what he was saying, the content of what he was saying was disturbing. But I responded by saying that he's talking foolishness. But what I'm saying, if you're not thinking what he's saying, then because he's so eloquent in his presentation, then you may say, whoa, man, you know, this guy is so educated. He can't be educated. He can't be both educated and a fool at the same time, you would think, right? But when I got the message, I was like, no, you know. And there are many people like that. There are many people still believing that, you know, this whole COVID thing was orchestrated, and, you know, they have many belief system, right? So that's what he does. He discouraged critical thinking, and he want people to believe in what he says. You know, must not ask question, because I am the authority. I am the excellency. How can you be asking question? I am the king. Kevin Smith and Jim Jones manipulation intensifies, where the leader becomes a source of fear and control, exploiting their power to exploit and abuse their followers. Now, one of the things is that they both had followers. You know, they both had people who were willing to go to the very extreme for them, right? And both Jim Jones and Kevin Smith had that effect on their followers. You know, as they were boarding 2 planes at the airstrip, that's talking about Jim Jones now, Jones' armed guards attacked them, killing Ryan and 4 others. Jones convinced his followers that the incident would result in U.S. authorities coming to Jonestown and committing mass murder. So that is how he drove fear into his followers, by telling them lies. And in a similar sense that Jim Jones' followers did his bidding, Kevin Smith's followers also did his bidding, right? Now, the horrific violence had erupted at Kevin Smith Church in 2021, where cult manipulation can lead. Several members were killed in a brutal ritual, allegedly, not allegedly at this point, orchestrated by Kevin Smith. The parallel to Jonestown are undeniable. Shortly after the incident, Smith died in a car crash, which he as you know, reading from the report last week or this week, he caused his own death, just like Jim Jones. He called people to the ark and said, "I am His Excellency Dr. Smith, Crown Bishop and End Time Nabi, Conqueror Line of a Tribe." His madness was full then. Now, how can we protect ourselves and others? Because the story of Jim Jones and Kevin Smith are a stark reminder of the danger of cults and the importance of critical thinking. If you suspect someone who may be involved in a cult, look for signs of isolation, control, and unhealthy dependence on the leader. They may seem withdrawn, a family member or a friend, and they may even express fear of leaving the group and readily defend the leader's action. So it's both. They will have at times make you know that they're fearful, but other times they will blindly defend the leader's action. Now we could say that about political parties, right? People blindly defend leaders' action and don't see anything wrong with anything that their leader does, right? And that's the world. The world is mad in some sense, to the lesser or greater degree, right? I think that the safest place is to be in Christ. The safest place is to take your self-worth and self-identity from Christ. And then you know that you don't need another person to tell you who you are, because you know who you are, and that is the safest place to be. So remember, true spiritual leaders empowers their followers. They foster independent thought and personal growth. They don't isolate, manipulate, or demand blind obedience. Now, if you are someone needs help, there are also resources out there. There are healthy churches out there, healthy organization out there. So let's talk a little about madness and share my own experience. Now, you know that you grew up in a community in Jamaica, if you grew up in Jamaica, that when you grow up in a community in Jamaica, most of the people in the community, their families and so on. And more likely, one and two mad people. No, right? Now, I grew up in Devon, Iris Road, St. Anne. And I mean, until I was like 8 years old, I left there. But avoid mad people. I knew of 3 mad persons with mental health problems, right? I mean, same thing. When I was a little boy, and when you see a mad person in your community, and I don't mean just simply homeless, I mean mad, you would simply avoid them. They had their mad ways. We had one called Plum. He would dance naked. He was in a trance. He was dance like he was in a trance. Now, if we see Plum dancing, we as children would not pass that way. Well, when we saw him dancing, we would not pass that way because we were afraid. And then we had Mad Paulette. And my memory of Paulette is that when she made me and my family duck for cover one day, for one whole day. It would seem like one whole day to me in our house, because somebody did something to her, or our madness take her. I don't remember what it was, but she just get off and play a stone and buckle or whatever she could get her hands on. We had to be ducking for cover, but that was Mad Paulette. But otherwise, we just say Paulette, we weren't afraid of her, but of course we wouldn't mess with her. And the other one was Mad Frankie. Frankie, everyone would know when Frankie was coming. He would be shouting in a preachy voice. Now I can't remember what he would be saying, but he had a nice tone. They all had seasons. At times you would see Plum well dressed and going to church. And you know what? They never had a following. they weren't manipulative, right? So when I say Kevin Smith and Jim Jones were mad, I am not comparing them to regular mad people in your community. Their madness is not simply due to some chemical imbalance in the brain or stress. It is wickedness, evil, devilish. It is a philosophy, a way of thinking. It's them giving themselves over to the devil. The truth is that you have mad people in big position in society even today. You have mad people, right? So we can't really compare the two. We have mad people in society. People are mad to lesser or greater degree, right? And now, what can we do? Practical steps. I during the 2021 thing with Kevin Smith, I made contact with the then president of the Jamaica Churches Association, and he mentioned, or he said that they're working on background checks for ministers, and they would have a database with ministers, their background check. Because one of the things about Kevin Smith is that he was convicted in Toronto, and I think it's Toronto, yes, in molesting a 21-year-old, and he just went to Montego Bay and started his church, and he had pictures with politicians and other people in society, and no one knew about his background. If people knew about his background, it would make a difference somewhat. So one of the things that they were working on, so I don't know if that happened. Somebody can let me know in the comment section, but that's one of the things, and that can help somewhat. It doesn't mean that that is going to foolproof the thing, but it can help somewhat. I mean, there are many churches in Jamaica. They're non-denomination church. Not every church is going to be part of the Jamaica Council of Churches or so on. And somebody can start a church. If there is no law that you have to be in the organization, people can start the church and still do what they do. But those things can be helpful too. You can't just leave one country to the next country and then nobody knows what happened to you, what was your background in the next country. We live in a global society, and I think that that should not be the case. Yeah, right now we have this thing with Mark Golding and the GLP, PNP thing going on with the citizenship thing. I don't think that should have been. It shouldn't be secretive, something like that. Your citizenship should be declared when you're going in for a certain position, just to know where you are. But the background check should come up with that, right? Now, another similarities between the two men what they did was that Jim Jones planned is rehearse what he was going to do with the people. For years, temple members had practiced suicide drills in which they pretended, meaning that they act it out. Can you imagine that? They act out what they were going to do. They pretended to drink poison and then fell down dead. So they do the action. They rehearse it. That's so sickening, right? They rehearsed it as part of a loyalty test to Jones. After the incident at the airstrip, Jones convinces for it's time to final commit, right? So they had been rehearsing it, and at the time, when at the incident at the airstrip in Jonestown, Jones said, "Okay, now is stop rehearsal finish. You're on stage now. Now is the time to take your life." So sad. But listen, it's not only Jim Jones that rehearsed what he did. Listen, Kevin Smith members did that too, in some way. Look, and this is from one of the cult members in an interview with the Observer. For an entire month in March of last year, 70 congregants of Pathway International Kingdom Restoration Ministries were told to pay 100,000 each for entry into Kevin Smith's ark. We've been talking about the ark. It was not like something new that he just posted on Twitter at the time or so on. He slept on where am I? Were told to pay 100,000 each for entry into Kevin Smith's ark. Slept on concrete floors and barely had enough to eat. The first boarding of the ark ended badly, but without the loss of life seen during this weekly bloody second attempt. So they practice, or they load the ark somewhat before, right? So when he's making a final call, when these cult leaders are making a final call, they're already being manipulated. They're deceived by the devil, and they themselves are deceived, and they are deceiving people. They are rehearse this thing until they finally made the leap. Right now, this video is not like something enjoyable to do, but I think it's necessary. But a lot of these things happened in the 60s also. Now, I still have concerns about possibility of things like this happening again in Jamaica and in the United States, yeah. And the reason being not that I know of a specific religious cult leader at the time who was like them to that extreme, but if you listen to and watch people comment online, you soon realize that many are easily led astray. And when that is the case, when a false prophet and mad prophet comes on the scene, it will be only a matter of time before something like this happens. I want you to share what are your thoughts on cult leaders and their tactics they use. And in the comment section, and if you ever had a situation that raised concern, or maybe you have been in a cult and you out now and you realize what you're in, because when you're in there, you don't realize what you're in. You don't really realize the danger of it until you come out. All right, so please share if you gain some knowledge about this video. Please hit the like button and subscribe to Liberating Truth. Remember, Liberating Truth is not just sharing news, sharing documentary about what happened. The point of sharing the truth is to get you out of the lie, if you're in the lie, or to equip you. That's the reason for sharing the truth. The truth is Jesus Christ himself, right? And ultimately, to protect yourself against the lies of the enemy, the schemes of the enemy, cult leaders, is to know Jesus Christ. Is to know Jesus Christ. I remember in 2021 listening to a sermon by Kevin Smith. I don't know if it's still online. But that sermon he was preaching against someone in his congregation. Of course, twisting and using
spirits of infiltration, spirits that come to attack. They're very subtle and they're very, 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 very quick. And some of you do not listen to leaders. And sometimes you expect us to spell everything out. But a good son, a good daughter, when her father speaks and instructs her who to stay away from, who to sit beside, a good child will listen to their father. And when you are stubborn, sometimes, you see, when I was a child, my mother used to stop speak to some people. I didn't know why. And I would overhear, I'm 2 and 3 years old, but I would overhear, she said, she's not talking to so-and-so. And in those days, we would have to, by just culture, greet every adult we meet. We have to greet them. They don't greet you, you greet them. Like good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As when I could talk, the words I was taught after mother and dad, I would say good morning, say good afternoon, say good evening. But when my mother wasn't talking to some people for whatever reason, I had this behavior of loyalty to my mother. Me not chat to you either. That saved me from when people were trying to poison me as a child, and when people were trying to turn my mind from my mother. They couldn't get a hand on me. Why? Because my mother stopped going your yard, me now go your yard.
the Old Testament, because most of these cult religious leaders use the Old Testament. And I mean, that person or persons, whoever it was, I remember clearly, he was so angry against someone. Maybe someone did him something. The wounds was fresh. The wound was fresh. Somebody hurt him, and I mean, he digged into them. You know what? And I believe that someone got a beating that day after that sermon, or someone is killed.
Who among you is keeping alive and has conspired to tell the Father a lie? Who among you? Holy, 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 holy. Who among you is a part of the conspiracy? Ilata Jomata Sikai Lobayatasa. Who among you knows what happened to my son? Who among you is a part of the conspiracy? And then say, Father, Joseph is not dead. Jesus. Hey. Jesus. Hey. We saw him because we saw how much you loved him. And because you favored him more than us, we killed your love for him by killing his destiny, by telling you he is dead, and we made sacrifice in order for you to believe it. How do you cut up the robe of many colors? Jesus. The robe that the Father gave him, you destroy.
That's all. Because listen, after the sermon, what he did was he told those who are not members that they can leave.
Who has been setting up the lives of my sons? Who has been fornicating with my sons? Who has dashed rebelling for my sons? Hey! Hey! Jesus! Oh! Jesus! Who has turned holy ground into hear what I said? So if you're a visitor and you need to go, leave now. Because this house locked down for every member. Jesus! Woo! Came up with the idea to use the garment as a point of contact for deception. Who is the spider stitching in this church? Wrapping up our children in her thread.
And that everybody else, tell the ushers to close the door because of whatever was going to proceed. He did not record that part, but I strongly believe that that happened. Now, if you have Christ in you, if you believe in Jesus, I don't believe that you can sit under such ministry for long. Because the Spirit of Christ will not just let you just sit under a ministry like that. So, ultimately, only the good shepherd can set you free. When you know the Son, who the Son set free, is free indeed. Jesus is the good shepherd who laid down his life for his sheep. And when we know the good shepherd will not fall for wolves, knowing who the Son sets free, and knowing that it is the Son who set us free, and we're free indeed. You know, when the Bible talks about you're free, it means that you're free from certain things. You're free from being manipulated by these false teachers because you know the Son who sets you free. Yeah? And so continue to listening to Liberating Truth. Search my page and listen to the other videos. And I pray that if you're not free spiritually, that you would come to know the Son who sets you free. Please put on your notification bell, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you for watching.